music, but also the events that shape the music.
Rock'n'Roll Unravelled.
It includes the backgrounds to recording sessions, singles, album releases, births and deaths, epic concerts, and festivals.
Rock'n'Roll Unravelled.
Shelmerdine has made a painstaking effort to document pretty much every event that would prove significant in shaping popular music.
Rock'n'Roll Unravelled.
Purchase the book at www.rock'n'rollunraveled.com. Follow him at Twitter at R&R Unraveled, and look him up on Facebook at Rock'n'Roll Unraveled.
Rock'n'Roll Unravelled.
By author Derek Shelmerdine.
Available now.
Hey, man, you're listening to the John Lebang Show, man.
The place where chronic brain cell rejuvenation happens.
Feel like you're getting any smarter yet?
Yeah. And of course, I mean, no conversation about classic labels would be complete without Sam Phillips. Now, he's the guy that actually founded Sun Records, but a couple of years before that, on the 30th of August 1950, he released his first ever single, and that was with a one-man band called Joe Hill Louie, with a song called Gotta Let You Go, and a B-side of Boogie in the Park. But he was, when he released that, that first single, it was on a label called It's the Phillips, and he's a partner there with another guy called Phillips, no relation, who was the Memphis DJ Dewey Daddio Phillips, and that's the guy that famously played Elvis's That's All Right nonstop when that was first released.
Yeah, that was like for 24 hours or something, right? He just kept playing that song over and over?
That's right. People just kept ringing in and requesting it. And the Elvis legend wasn't really born because he didn't have a hit for a little while after that. But it's certainly where Elvis really started to find himself on the first rung of the first ladder of what turned out to be quite a successful career. But also Carl Perkins, who was a stalwart of the Sun label. On the 1st of August 55, he released his first single on Sun that was Let the Jukebox Keep on Playing. And interestingly enough, on the same day, Elvis released his last Sun single, I Forgot to Remember to Forget, which is one of those great titles.
And that's when you said that's his last one on that record. He went to a bigger label after that?
Yeah, he went to RCA. That was when shortly before that, the Colonel Tom Parker, he became Elvis's manager, and he negotiated a deal at RCA, and RCA took Elvis and the Sun Elvis back catalogue, and that was when Elvis Heartbreak Hotel was his first single, and that was that really was the start of the Elvis legend. He just success after success after success there.
Right. And then Carl Perkins, he had his first ever single, Movie Mag?
That's right. And what's interesting about that, it was on another Sam Phillips label called the Flip label. And shortly after that, he abandoned the Flip label because there was another Flip label. I think it was California, not 100% sure about that. But the owners of the other original Flip label, they contacted Sam Phillips and threatened to sue him if he put out any more records using the name of their record label.
Lots of drama in the music industry, I swear.
Absolutely. But Carl Perkins gave Sun their first million seller with Blue Suede Shoes. Sadly, none of those people are on the road. But Sun Records, believe it or not, Sun Records' biggest rock and roll star, Jerry Lee Lewis, he's playing again. And he's got a gig lined up on the 17th of February next year at the Peace Center in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah, and didn't he just finish a little bit of a tour just recently too?
That's right. He was in Florida at the Strawberry Festival, and that goes on for about a week. And each day they have an afternoon session and an evening session. And they have, major artists headlining each of those days, and he played one of those gigs. So, I mean, he doesn't gig a lot, but I mean, the guy's in his mid-80s, and he's still out and about. In fact, I saw a video of the Florida concert. It was best part of an hour long, and it was great.
He's had such an interesting career. It's fascinating, really. With the ups and downs early on there, he was getting big, and then all the hoopla over his marriage, and then everything from there on. Just that guy really. It's surprising that he's still going at this age.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he was without doubt Sun Label's biggest rock and roll star. But then when he came home for his British tour, it was discovered that the young lady with him was the 13-year-old daughter of his bass-playing cousin, and also his wife. And the fans in the UK and America took a very dim view of this, deserted him in droves. So his rock and roll career nosedived around that. It was February 58, I think. And shortly afterwards, he reinvented himself as a country music star. And he's got, if you look at country music charts, he's got dozens of hits across the years. He really did reinvent himself very successfully.
Right, and I would say what he was doing originally wasn't that far from country style, with the piano and everything. So it probably wasn't a huge transition for him.
No, exactly, and he's got his roots in gospel as well. I mean, he did go to religious college for about a term to train to be a preacher, but apparently he got thrown out for playing hymns to a boogie-woogie rhythm.
Little known fact about me, I was supposed to be a priest. The family was grooming me to be a priest. It was girls that pretty much got me thrown out, so,
Well, the world's a sadder place for it, John.
That's right.
Or a better place, whichever way you look at it.
It's probably sadder. Anyways, then we got some first records.
That's right, some great singles. Cliff Richard and his band, they call themselves the Drifters. Originally, they became the Shadows later. They've got the 60th anniversary of their first single. That was the 29th of August, 1958. And originally, it's an interesting one because originally it was going to be Schoolboy Crush, Bobby Helms cover from 1958, on the A side, and a side written by Ian Samwell, one of the band, Move It, on the B side. But apparently the producer's daughter, Norrie Paramore, she raved about the B side, and Jack Good, who was a major TV promoter, he wanted to have Move It on his show, Oh Boy. So they like a lot of songs, the original A-side got flipped and Move It became the A-side. And apparently it was recorded in just 2 takes, 20 minutes. And Cliff Richard liked to play because he played guitar, a bit like Elvis, a lot like Elvis, in fact, in the 50s. But he liked to play guitar while he was singing. And he wasn't required at all to play guitar on the recording, but Norrie Paramore, the producer, allowed Cliff to hold on to his guitar, a bit like a comfort blanket, I guess.
And that, that was incredible back then. Something we don't get these days is you just said he recorded this in 2 takes, and it was done. These days, you're in for one song. It could take weeks to finish these days.
Absolutely. I mean, in those days, certainly in the 50s when this was recorded, they were essentially live recordings because they were mostly one track. And essentially, what happened was the band played live in the studio, and they might have a couple of takes, they might do a little bit of splicing, but as you say, there really wasn't a lot of editing going on.
These guys back then, I think, were just really good musicians. And they were used to having to do something in 1 or 2 takes, so they became masters of their craft. That's why we got really great music at the time, because all these musicians in this 30, 40-year period really had to get things done, especially the early guys, in 1 or 2 takes, because that's all you would get. You couldn't just overdub for weeks.
Absolutely, and there weren't that many recording studios. Studio time was expensive. And it all happened very quickly and produced some great music.
Definitely. And it wasn't, I think it really was the Beatles and Pink Floyd and bands like that really introduced the massive overdubbing and the big orchestrated this and that you could go in and do a couple takes. And that was later towards the end of the Beatles' career more than the beginning, because in the beginning, they were very much the same way. You just go in, play your song, and you better get that right.
Absolutely. I think they recorded their first, what was the first British album, Please Please Me. I think that was recorded in a day or a couple of days at most. Absolutely incredible. But what happened was I mean, as far as Pepper, the Pepper was recorded on 2 4-track machines, so the technology wasn't that great. And one of the problems they had, of course, is if you started doing clever things in the studio, then they couldn't reproduce it on the road because the road technology was even more basic than the studio technology. So there was a combination of having to make sure that they could promote the recordings, because they were mostly singles. Albums didn't become popular until the sort of mid-'60s. It was really the rock era that sort of mid-'66, '67 that really brought the album to its fore. So people out on the road had to be able to reproduce what they were doing in the studio.
Now, Cliff, he had a lot of good talented musicians on the stuff we were just talking about, right?
That's right. I mean, there were a couple of the band, Terry Smart, the drummer, and Ian Samwell, who was actually the lead guitarist with Cliff Richard's band. But they had a couple of session musicians, Frank Clark on double bass, and Ernie Shear is the lead guitarist. So the amazing lead guitar you hear on Move It is a guy called Ernie Shear.
Now, you may have to explain to people what double bass is, because double bass back then is a lot different than today's double bass where it's 2 kick drums. Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is what morphed into the bass guitar. This is one of the largest instruments in an orchestra, and it's essentially the bass, string bass, and it was upright, and it stood 6 foot. It was as tall as the guy playing it. And if you watch people like Bill Haley on old videos, I mean, some of these bass players are really entertaining because they would stand on the bass. It was essentially shaped like a very, very large
cello
violin.
Right.
So it sort of went in the center, and it was obviously it wasn't. Well, in those days, it wasn't electrified, so it was just an acoustic instrument.
Exactly, and you see a lot of these guys playing this instrument and be spinning it and dancing around it because it was like 6 foot tall, right? It was pretty tall. It was a 5 foot, 6 foot instrument.
Absolutely. So it was a great one from a performance point of view, and some of these bass players are very entertaining to watch.
And Cliff is on tour.
That's right. He's got a UK tour going on from the 4th to the 20th of October. So plenty of chance to see him again. I mean, the Shadows themselves have stopped touring. His backing band on this was the Drifters, but they changed that to avoid the name of confusion with the American vocal group of the same name, and they became the Shadows. But interesting enough, I mean, there's another great single from the Small Faces. Their first single, released on the 6th of August, 1965, What You Gonna Do About It? And that was with the original organist, Jimmy Wilson, before Ian McLagan joined. But that was actually written and produced by Ian Samwell, who we've just been talking about as Cliff Richard's guitarist. Dick Dale, that's right, legendary guitarist Dick Dale. Now, he was born in 1937. He's one of these guys that's 81 years old now. And he recorded a track called Let's Go Tripping on the 23rd of August, 1961. And that's usually cited as the first surf rock record, because the Beach Boys' Surfing, originally it was released on a small label called Candix before they got their Capitol deal around the end of 61. So he predated them. What's interesting about him, he was a left-handed guy, played right-handed guitar without restringing it.
So he played upside down?
That's essentially it. He eventually did get a left-handed guitar, but he started off playing it upside down, basically.
So the strings were backwards. Even like Tony Iommi, he plays left-handed, but the strings are in the same order. You're saying he's playing a completely flipped-over guitar.
Yeah, when he started playing, recording at this sort of time, that's exactly what he was doing. Probably gives him his distinctive sound. That
would have been confusing. I'm left-handed, and I just learned how to play the damn right-handed guitar for the hell of it. Right. And in fact, we're going to switch off guitars for a minute because, you know me, I take us on the detours real quick. I think the right-handed guitar should be a left-handed guitar because all your fingering is on your left hand. But that's just me.
That's right. That's always fascinated me about guitars, and it seems to be the wrong way around somehow.